Welcome to Currently, a weekly news roundup featuring conversations about some of the top local stories from the past 7 days from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Christal Frost. Now, this podcast was recorded on Wednesday, April 23rd, so things may change by the time you're watching or listening. Currently is made possible by underwriting from our generous lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. They're located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's home fashion elevated. Support also comes from West Shore Bank. Now, when you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner that's committed to the well-being of our community. You can visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. And from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City, it's a chill hangout boasting a full bar of 200 plus, rotating cans, drafts, shooters, and of course, pinball machines in a low-key setting. Now, joining me today in the studio, as always, she's my right-hand lady, Ms. Beth Milligan. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you?
The head writer of the Traverse City Ticker.
That's very fancy.
You don't just write about heads, though.
No, the whole body.
What if you were like I'm the head writer?
Yes.
All right, moving on. Also, for a second time, but I wasn't here the first time you were here. So you're a newbie to me, Mr. Bill Froehlich.
Yes, we've never met, but it's a pleasure to make your
Bill and I
acquaintance.
soldiered on alone last time,
Yes.
but we're glad you're here with us this
You
time.
you did a great job last
From
time.
the head writer to the talking head, I thought.
To the talking head. I love that. Oh, man, that would have been great.
It's a good transition.
Write that one down.
Darn it. The
So, in
talking.
case you ever let me come back, make a note.
Bill Froehlich, the host of Good Day Northern Michigan. 5 hours you are talking on TV. How does that feel?
It feels pretty good.
Day.
Yeah, Good Day is the hour after Michigan this morning.
This morning.
4 hours of news every morning, and then.
Is it weird that I watch Good Day because I wake up late?
No, I love that for you.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Different journey than Bill's, I think, probably.
No, Bill, you and I go way back. We did radio together back in the day. Both were talk show hosts, and then you moved back into TV. But one thing I remember about you is your love of Days of Our Lives. You still watching the Days of Our Lives?
I'm actually really pleasantly surprised that you remembered that.
Oh, of course I remember that. You used to be in the newsroom, and you had to have a TV in the newsroom
Oh, wow.
during the afternoon news. so
I
you
don't
could
even
watch
remember
Days of
that.
Our Lives.
That is such a
Wow.
fun fact.
So,
Yeah, I don't remember that.
so what's going on? Is it later that same day?
Well, now it's on. It's only streaming,
Oh,
so you can 24 hours a day. You can just take your pick. And-
really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I used to be really into soap operas too. So
I mean, not that I know, but just in case you're curious.
of course. Well, it's good to know that.
I did
about
go
you.
on. I should point out, I did take a very lengthy multi-year break
You did,
from the program.
but you didn't miss much though. This is when
no,
I
most of the characters are the same.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
back in the day when I watched a lot of soap operas. That was my thing too. I could be gone for a year, and I'd be like later that same day.
Still scheming.
They're still scheming. All right, for our friends out there, the Ticker, of course, is a free multimedia daily news email and website, and you can be sure to subscribe at traversticker.com. And of course, as we mentioned, we can see you on Michigan This Morning and Good Day Northern Michigan weekday mornings on 9 and 10 News.
Also free.
It's also free? Yeah? You don't have to pay for
Free,
it?
baby.
Well,
That's the
look
way
at
to
that.
go.
We love that.
I don't know what we're doing, Beth, giving
I don't know how
our materials away for free.
we're doing, but
The worst idea.
enjoy it while it's there.
Well, we appreciate
Oh,
it.
that's good.
Thank you all. We're going to start things off with a story that is being felt around the world, and that is the death of Pope Francis. Now, Bill, you were up really early Monday morning, and you broke the news. I mean, a lot of us were waking up. Maybe we, noticed an alert on our phones or something like that, but you were actually in the moment breaking the news. And I think we thought it would be interesting to talk about how you and your colleagues deal with breaking news like the death of the Pope during a live show. And for those who don't know, when you're producing a live show, you have to have everything there to fill time, right? It's not just like, hey, you know what I heard? That's not the show you do. Right. Certainly not the show we do most of the time. And I feel like, that kind of disrupts everything when you have to switch gears. So how did you handle that?
It does. A lot of it just comes down to the timing of all of it. On Monday this week, I was in the office at 1 a.m. and we spent a couple hours, writing our scripts. We put stories in order in each of our newscasts, each half hour or hour at a time. for the order in which we want them to appear, right?
Yeah.
And try to make sense of it. In one sense, it was kind of fortunate because we already had a story. We call it slugged. The story was slugged already to air about Easter Sunday.
Yeah, sure.
And the Pope addressing the crowd at from the Vatican on Easter Sunday or at St. Peter's. And so we already had this chunk of time, this 2 minutes blocked off for the Pope story of the day, right? And then it was 3:55 in the morning and our computers start beeping, the obscenely loud noises and the red lights start flashing and there's breaking news alert. So we still had an hour before air. I mean, it wasn't immediately while we were on, which would have been a completely different beast. But we had a lot to change and adjust to in just an hour's notice and put that story in and take that other story out and move things up and down in the newscast. And so there's quite a bit of chaos that can kind of go on. And then, 5 o'clock rolls around and we just flip the light on and pretend it's no big deal.
Like we've known
Here we are.
this, yeah.
Yeah, it's a no thing.
Well, and one of the big things that local news does, and of course, something we like to highlight here on Currently is the local reaction to things. And obviously, this was a global event, but it does have a reaction, and people are affected here in northern Michigan. And so, in the middle of doing all this, I'm sure you have reporters that are out there going, "Hey, let's find some local reaction as well."
Yeah, you really just, with any big national story, we try to find a way to localize it to, why would somebody down the street care? And while you or I or people watching may or may not be Catholic, there are certainly a large number of Christians in the area, in the country who are at least, familiar with who the Pope is, a very influential figure in Christianity. I don't remember the exact number, but 70% of Michiganders are Christian. And so just by nature of that, it's something we wanted to just localize and see who's influenced or who has felt the impact. Right. The first stop is to go to the Diocese of Gaylord. They obviously have the immediate connection, and I'm quite confident they probably found out before we did.
Oh yeah.
Getting the memos to the bishops across the country. So reaching out to them, and then any parishioners that we may know or have a contact with. I know we're looking into a story, maybe talking to St. Francis High School here in Traverse City. We did a story yesterday up in Sault Ste. Marie with the elementary school. And one interesting point that the kindergarten teacher had about that was, they had just come off of Lent and Holy Week.
Right.
So they had been spending 40 days talking about the story of Jesus and the death and resurrection. And so it was a difficult topic to talk about the death of the Pope.
Right.
But the teacher said, we just came off a huge lesson about death. And so as hard as that was for a 5-year-old, they at least had a concept of what was going on, which was just a really interesting point that I just, hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
So we just try to, again, with any story, we try to figure out, is there any kind of local impact? Would anybody have a local interest?
Yeah.
And so even when it's something national or bigger, we try to find a way to make it connect locally. Yeah.
And I know, Beth, that's certainly what the Ticker does. And, all of really most of our news outlets here in Northern Michigan are doing that. I have a really weird question, and I'm just going to ask it because that's what I do.
You do. You do that well, actually.
So I remember back in the day, probably late 90s, maybe early 2000s, there was an SNL bit where there was a very well-known news anchor, Tom Brokaw, who was trying to take time off. And he had to do all of these, like, just in case Gerald Ford died. So it was all these different things, like, Gerald Ford died today. He was mauled by lions. And, like, all these different things. Do you have to do that when you prepare for?
No.
Okay.
Although that has always been a fun skit in my memory as well. No, but one thing that is done pretty commonly, I'd say, in the industry is to create what we call a package or a story that's an obituary for some of these well-known prominent figures in advance. And it's just a very generic, this was the life of this person, what they did in their life, what they accomplished, why they're influential. I'm quite confident that there's one for every president.
Oh, sure.
The Pope is another example. If we hear of, movie stars who are aging or suddenly in declining health, they'll go work on a story just in case, so we can have that. And the Pope was a good example of that because, again, he passed, or we got the word that he passed away just before 4 a.m. But by 4:30, we already had a story from the network.
Right.
And
so that was a package.
yeah,
they knew.
that was done in advance.
Okay.
And by 5, we had another version. And by 6, we had another version.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those were already prepared just in case.
Right.
And I imagine when he got sick several weeks back that they made sure that
Oh,
they were just
People
ready.
were already prepared.
Just in case. Yeah. I mean, not to be morbid, but you want to just be prepared and not be caught off guard. And you can't come on TV at 5 a.m. and say, well, we don't really know much yet about the man who's been Pope for 15 years. But
Pope Francis mystery.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that there's a couple things that I would recommend to folks if they want to, if they are, moved by the Pope's passing or just want to learn more about his legacy or what comes next. I think if you saw the movie Conclave, which has had a huge skyrocketed streams since the Pope's passing.
It's a great movie.
It is. And of course it's, dramatized, but it does give a little bit of a inside peek into the process of a conclave in which the cardinals are locked in and choose the next pope, which will be a process that will be happening soon. And the other one is The Daily, which is the New York Times podcast, which as a journalist, I recommend. It's really well produced and it's something I go to every day to get, in-depth reporting on different topics. But they had a story about Pope Francis this week. And I think it's a really interesting look at his legacy. His papacy was really defined by, he was very popular with the people. He was criticized by conservatives for pushing the church too far. He was also criticized by progressives for not pushing it far enough. But he was really determined to challenge clericalism. And I think his popularity was defined by the fact he was encouraging his cardinals and people in the church to get outside of their churches and to be among the people. It's what he was known from even before he became a pope, riding the subway, being with people. And I think that kind of speaks to his popularity and his strength too.
Well, that's great. I mean, and thank you for giving us a little insight into what it's like to, first of all, 1 a.m.
I know. That's ridiculous.
I was like, that's when I go to bed.
Like, what time do you go to bed?
Bed.
I know. I think we talked about this last time, like 5, right? Isn't it early?
5.
That is something.
And I don't want to totally derail it, but just another example real quickly is I happened to be anchoring on the Saturday night newscast at 6 p.m. this past summer during the assassination attempt on President Trump.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that was literally in the middle of the newscast. I mean, I had just come out of sports and it's, Tigers won 3-2 and
wow.
my goodness,
what's
there's been a shooting, so I mean, just rolling with it. And that's just a challenge of
News never stops.
True.
Never stops.
It doesn't. Well, let's move on to the next story. And there's some, Beth, this is one of your stories, and I'm really excited about this. Rebuilding Central Grade School, making Central High School feel new again, and updating music facilities. TCAPS is weighing these 3 major construction projects. So can you tell us more about this and what the timeline is going to look like?
Sure. I mean, these are 3 major projects that collectively represent about $90 million in planned construction work, which is a half of the bond that was passed in 2024, the capital bond of $180 million. Some of that funding, I mean, the most is going to come from that bond. It could overlap with the future bond as well, but it's a huge chunk of this bond and what these projects are. The major one, the reconstruction of Central Grade School, discussed for many years, a very popular historic school downtown in Central neighborhood. That project is likely going to cost over $55 million.
Wow.
The update that was given to trustees last week was that the plan is for staff to start moving Central Grade's operations over to Glen Loomis next summer, summer 2026, with students starting at Glen Loomis in the 2026-2027 school year. So they're going to be vacating Central Grade School, using Glen Loomis as a backup school for 3 years, which is how long it's expected to take to reconstruct Central Grade. And then once they're gone, the work on that school will begin. So the process right now is they've held some visioning sessions with parents, staff, neighbors, community members to talk about the future of Central Grade. There were some areas of consensus that have emerged. I mean, again, a very beloved school. People generally want to keep the general footprint of the school, the big front lawn that people know, which is used for field day and other TCAPS activities. They are looking at making a lot of changes, though, to the cafeteria, moving the main office, creating some separation for Lars Hoxted Auditorium. They are talking about demolishing 2 specific areas of the school, a courtyard area and the West Wing, which is the wing closest to Wadsworth. I went to Central Grade School for elementary school. That's where my 5th and 6th grade classes were. I remember that wing really well. It's kind of, it doesn't meet modern sightlines. It's a long, big block of a wing. So if you're a teacher at one end, you have to like walk almost a block to get to the other end to have the sight lines for supervision. So it's challenging for supervision. You know, what's interesting about Central Grade is when you go in and modernize a historic building like that, there's so much that's been grandfathered in for decades that now is going to have to be brought up to modern code. So for example, when they redo the school, any grades below 2nd grade have to be on the ground floor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's a modern code requirement. And those first graders in kindergartens, everything that they're going to access, whether it's cafeterias, libraries, gyms, music, art, that all has to be on the first floor as well.
Oh, wow.
So they have to make sure the first floor of the building, when they rebuild it, is big enough for all of that. They'll still have the 2nd floor for the upper grades. They still have the 3rd floor, which when I went to Central Grade, everyone thought was haunted.
Yeah,
it was
it
big,
is.
Yeah, from an old fire. They do have to bring that floor up to code. It likely won't have students in it because they're too far away from the main office and emergency, but maybe conference rooms, things like that. So that project is still in design. There will still be opportunities for the public to give feedback, but they're moving forward in the design process. The other thing I think is interesting about that is the district's Talented and Gifted program, the TAG program, is housed at Central Grade now. It's like a magnet school for those classes. They will not be able to fit in Glen Loomis when they move, and they're using that opportunity to look at the long-term home of TAG. It's possible that program could be divided into East and West Side schools in the future. So that's another thing that they're looking at as part of that discussion.
So, well, that's a huge change because that used to be the big deal. Like you get into TAG, you get to go to the big school.
Right.
You know?
And it still could be, but they're just figuring that out.
So Glen Loomis closed a number of years ago at this point because the Montessori program that was housed there was building a new Montessori school. And that I think is behind Meyer on Frankie or whatever. I'm wondering, like, is it up to date? I mean, it's been sitting vacant for a couple of years now. Is it going to be ready for, all of those kids? Lots of kids coming from Central for 3 years.
Yeah. And in fact, they've already anticipated that. The TCAPS administration is there now. So same thing where the administration building, over off Boardman, that has been sold. That's being redeveloped into, a residential complex. So when they moved to Glen Loomis, they had to bring some things up in terms of tech and IT, Wi-Fi, things like that for administration to work there. But they also did it keeping in mind that school classes were going to be there in the future.
All right. So that's just one of the projects. There's a couple more.
Yeah. So quickly, the other two, Central High School, that's at least a $20 million project, at least in this bond. There also could be another $15 million in a second phase of a future bond. There's a lot of improvements to be made at that school. I also went to Central High School, so I'm familiar with it. They want to eventually change it. It's kind of what's called a California style campus, which is very open. It's nice for students. They can go off campus for lunch. It has an airy feel to it. Not great for modern security issues. Lots of accessibility from all different kinds of building with outdoor doors, exterior doors. They're trying to tighten that up a little bit so that there'd be one entry point into the school with the main office, and you could either go left for the gym and athletics or right into the athletic or the academic complex of the school. There's a lot of discussion about the gyms. So there's an original 1958 gym there that a lot of people feel very nostalgic and protective over. In fact, I was talking with the Cornwell family this week, whose family, their father helped design that gym. There's a lot of protectionism of it. It's also similar to Central Grade or something else because of the era it was built in. First of all, there weren't really two separate genders of sports at the time. But also it just doesn't have the ADA compliant, a lot, the space that they need. So there's a lot of discussion right now about potentially demolishing some of the gyms that are at Central High School, building new facilities so that eventually that high school will have 4 functioning gyms that can be used for sports competitions, practices, and that would make it equitable with West, which has 4 now. So Central High only has 2 right now. And some of those are challenging for practice.
How did I not know that West had 4 gyms? Like that's lousy in gyms.
There's
like you're having a lot of gyms there.
When you get into high school, there's a lot of different sports, a lot of demand. You have both, women's and men's sports. And so a lot going on. So again, just with like central grade, decisions haven't been made. There's going to be a lot of talk about demolishing, but those are kind of where they're at. And then the last one I'll just mention is the music programs. Those are all 4 secondary schools, the 2 middle schools, the 2 high schools. All of those are expected across the board to get at least $14.5 million in improvements. And they're just working on the design to help give things like new choral space, more music instruction storage space, things like that.
All right.
I was just going to add a couple comments on each of those points. I love the comment you made about protectionism. I feel like that is a huge part of the TCAPS community, both for Central High School and Central Grade.
Yeah.
Well, they've been talking about Central Grade for the 25 years that I've been around here.
Sure.
And there is a lot of protection for that school. And, you can't tear it down. You can't send our kids somewhere else, So I think there's a lot of loyalty to both of those schools. And clearly it's coming at a significant cost too. But there has long been that discussion about, well, is it cheaper to build a new one or is it cheaper to renovate? And, that's just a huge undertaking. I didn't go to either of those schools, but I have been in both of them several times.
Yeah.
And when I was in Central Grade, I want to say maybe it was for the film festival when it started back there. I mean, I was just concerned about the condition that it was in at the time.
Yeah.
So I just know there's a lot of work to be done there.
Old mechanicals and there's talk about, then they're going to look at all this stuff. And part of the opportunity with Central Grade is sustainability. So looking at, can they go fully electric? Maybe they can go fully electric. And part of the building, can they air condition? Lars Hawk said it's used for all kinds of community events, TC Phil concerts. It's been used for everything. So those are all part of the discussions.
It gets hot in there.
It does. In the summer, it gets really hot in Lars Hawk said.
Well, thanks for keeping us up to date on that. I mean, obviously, we will, you have the finger on the pulse when it comes to that. So thank you for keeping us up to date. And coming up, it's everyone's favorite topic, road funding. Yeah. Plus, Beth will give us an update on recent City Commission agenda items. But first, a word for Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. I got to tell you, I did a bunch of spring cleaning over the weekend. Part of it was by choice, part was because of a flood, but I digress. And I've decidedly hated all of my things. I just don't. Spring means rebirth. It means refresh. It means new, which is why I love that Golden-Fowler is having an amazing Smith Brothers anniversary sale. That is unbeatable deals all through the month of April. So here's the thing. When you buy 2 pieces of Smith Brothers furniture, you get the 3rd piece for $98. That's it. 3 beautiful pieces of furniture. One of them is only going to cost you $98. So if you love a good deal, like I do, and you're looking around your house and you're feeling like your current furniture is old or drab or spent or like so yesterday, you don't have to look at it anymore. Look no further than Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. It's the absolute best prices of the year happening right now at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings all through the month of April. So stop hating your furniture. It's okay. You can let it go. You can donate it and replace it with Smith Brothers furniture at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. All right. Welcome back to Currently. The third story we're going to talk about today, I'm going to toss it back over to you, Bill, because after passing through the Republican-controlled House last week, the stage is now set for the Senate to do their debate thing over a $3.2 billion road funding package. I mean, so many things in that sentence, like debate, road funding. How many times are we going to talk about road funding in Michigan? Probably a lot more. Yeah.
We're just getting started.
So what's in the current bill? It's $3.2 billion. And do you have any ideas over where things might change in the future?
First off, let me just point out, we're not going to spend nearly as much time on road funding as we did on the Central Grade School and the Pope, because I mean, one of the challenges with most stories out of Lansing is that so much does change and can change. So while we certainly as journalists want to, cover the news and give them due credit and talk about what's happening, we do walk this kind of fine line between how much detail do we want to get in versus what might change by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So that is really a big challenge. So I'll just, a very blanket statement and information about what's going on. Again, the $3.2 billion road funding, and they're talking about changing the structure of the gas tax and, not having the sales tax, be the major driver of that. There have been proposals to have Michigan residents pay by the miles that they drive, which is, for some people, a very popular idea. For other people, they don't understand the logistics of how you track it.
I drove 1 mile.
Just the nightmare of, holding people accountable and honest. And, well, we could put a tracking device to record your miles in your car. Well, you're not putting anything in my car.
No.
So that is, I think, part of the ongoing debate. And probably be fair to say that's why this debate has struggled for so many years to actually
how to pay for it.
Yeah, to gain traction is they just don't. No, there just doesn't seem to be a consensus. So, we're in the Senate now, but we still have to go through a committee process before we go to the full Senate. There's still going to be rewrites and revisions. And so, again, not only do I not know all the finer points to be fair, but I wouldn't even want to talk about them if I did, because
it's going to change.
It's going to change again by probably tomorrow morning as they work on all of this. But I know part of the discussion is to cut funds in the state budget from DHHS, Health and Human Services. There's talk about cutting from corrections and also from universities in Michigan. Which, as you can imagine, is not very popular.
I don't know that any of those would be popular.
We just had a story this morning about a report about DHHS and how there are concerns about the pace at which DHHS responds to concerns about children in potentially dangerous situations. And then 10 minutes later, we're talking about cutting funds to DHHS. So there are a lot of concerns and a lot of unanswered questions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's pretty early to figure this out. But I always think it's a good talk topic because no matter who you ask, you could be pumping gas. I would advise you to do this. Next time you're pumping gas, just say to the person pumping next to you, "Hey, how do you think we should pay for roads?" And you will get answers.
You'll get an answer.
You'll get answers. And there are always going to be people out there that say things like, we got to make sure that we're, giving a tax to the visitors, the people who are here, who don't live here, who can help cover those costs. Who drive on our roads, those tourists,
or the truckers and, yeah.
What about those truckers? But I mean, I think people should just ask Beth Milligan, how do we fix the roads?
Oh, yeah. I'll solve everything.
Yes.
I just think cut all of the other departments and just put it all into the roads.
I do think one of the interesting...
My official position.
I do think one of the interesting points is I'm just drawing some parallels or similarities to the national discussion that we're seeing and the conflict between the Trump administration, Republicans, Democrats about, well, we can cut out the fraud and we can cut out the waste, but we don't have to cut the services. That's the one side. And the other side is saying, that's not happening.
Right.
We're going to affect services if you start cutting. And we're seeing that with the layoffs of federal employees and the concerns about that, Social Security, just an example, and things of that nature. So I think you can draw the parallel to road funding too, and talking about cutting some funds from services. Well, we're just going to cut trim the fat, and maybe we'll lay off some administrative positions. Well, yeah, but is that really enough to do X, Y, Z? So I think there's a lot of that in the state house and state senate too, of Republicans wanting to push that similar message of we can trim here, here, and here. Democrats saying, yeah, can we do that?
Right. But if we do, what does that look like in
What's
reality?
The impact really
there's always trade-offs.
There's always trade-off. Well, I mean, I'm sure we're going to have you back on once it's the budget is set, and then you can say, I called it. I knew exactly what they were going to do. I just didn't want to share it with you.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Just pretend. All right, before we wrap up, Beth, how about an update on recent city commission agenda items? And Bill, I know that you all covered this as well, but let's just go to the city commission. I'm tossing it over.
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple updates from this week that I can share, and I do know that 9 and 10 covered some of these as well. The first being, I think the one that was maybe most notable was the trespassing ordinance that was discussed at the city commission. So that ordinance was proposed to amend the city's parks rules to essentially allow police officers to arrest people for trespassing in city parks. The proposed language right now, what they do if someone is, doing something they don't want in a city park. And this is a notable conversation because the Pines, the homeless encampment off 11th Street, is in city parkland. And they are going to start enforcing the city's no camping ordinance in early May. So this was, the timing of this was clearly meant to address in some way the Pine situation and give the TCPD enforcement abilities to clear people out of the Pines if they needed to. This trespass ordinance, right now they can issue a verbal warning if someone's in a city park and they don't want them there. If the person refuses to leave or stop doing the behavior that they're doing, they can give them a civil infraction. A misdemeanor, a notice to appear, essentially. And that's really it. That's the kind of the boundaries of their enforcement abilities. This proposed ordinance change would have allowed them, if they went through those steps and the person was still not complying, to arrest someone for trespassing. We have state law in Michigan that allows you to arrest people for trespassing on private property. It is difficult to enforce that on public lands, which typically we as members of the public have access to, the right to access the city park. Unless it's codified in the ordinance. So the TCPD essentially said we could start issuing, trespassing citations to the folks in the Pines, but the prosecutor's probably not going to enforce those unless it's written into our ordinance. However, in a split vote, 4-3, commissioners shot down that proposed ordinance change, so it will remain the way it is now, which is the verbal warning as civil infraction. And the reason they did, I think there was some concern that this would be an overreach. It wouldn't just be for like trespassing at the Pines. It could also be if someone's holding an event in a city park and they're supposed to have a permit, or maybe they're doing something in a park that an officer doesn't like. I think there was concern that it would creep potentially into enforcing a lot of behaviors at parks that maybe the city commission didn't feel comfortable cracking down on in that way and giving the TCPD that much authority. The other thing that was pointed out, Commissioner Mitch Treadwell brought up this point, was that if you're doing something illegal in a city park, if you're drunk and disorderly, if you're driving your car recklessly across a parkland, or any number of things, if you're getting in a fight with someone, there are other laws that govern that behavior. You can be arrested for being drunk and disorderly. So they felt if someone's truly doing something illegal in a city park, there's many laws under which they can be arrested. I think trespassing was too generalized for the commission's comfort level to allow that to happen. Now, what this will mean likely is when the Pines enforcement begins, they're going to be somewhat limited in their enforcement abilities. They can't arrest for trespassing now. They can still do those infractions. They can come warn people every day, but they're going to be a little bit more limited in that enforcement capacity.
Is there a law on the books that does not allow for people to camp in public parklands?
Yes. And there's a city ordinance that prohibits camping in all city parks, including the Pines. But again, what they can do to enforce that ordinance is limited to this range of verbal warnings and citations. So it's a little, and the Supreme Court last year gave a very important ruling on this issue, which it said public entities like the city of Traverse City can enforce no camping ordinances. So that was a big win for municipalities. Homeless advocates were not happy with it because it does allow them to kind of clean people who are experiencing homelessness out of parks. But that is allowed by the Supreme Court. However, our ordinance now in Traverse City, just folks need to understand, because of this vote this week, is a little more limited in what the police can do.
Did you get any comment from the Traverse City Police Department as to, their thoughts about the decision from the City Commission?
I mean, I think, Chief Matt Richmond has talked, he did speak at the meeting about this and explained why it would be a helpful tool for them. He's a pretty measured chief, so not a strong overreaction, I think, to the city decision. He has spoken a lot about the desire to treat the folks who are at the Pines with compassion. The city is trying to give them each individual warnings leading up to this May enforcement. They're trying to connect them with Safe Harbor, which has a vote coming up soon to go year round. So I have heard a lot of messaging from the TCPD about compassion. I think they were looking for this extra tool, but I think they'll continue to do the best they can with a commission vote.
Yeah, right.
I'd only add to that, I think the next couple of weeks will be especially interesting too. I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say political pressure, but there's a lot of pressure in some ways to just expect that they will allow safe harbor to go year round. Mm-hmm. Because what happens if they vote no on the 5th and then the 6th they're supposed to kick everybody out?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And if they do vote no, might the city or the police department put a pause on that decision, which I think is fairly possible. Again, there will be a lot that still comes out of this, and that could, again, still change in the weeks ahead. But this is where we stand right now.
Yeah, that vote will be important. I would be surprised if it didn't pass. Yeah. I think there could be some dissenting votes just based on the commission discussion I've seen so far. It would certainly put Safe Harbor in a very challenging position, having fundraised this money for the next 2 years to do this pilot at the city's encouragement with support from city staff who have communicated to the public that they have been trying to expedite the land use permit process. Yes. So, but I do sense some commissioners have questions, so it could be an interesting conversation.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, we'll continue to cover it. I know 9 and 10 News will cover it. The Ticker does a great job covering it. But, before we go, I have to ask you all, what are you looking forward to in the coming week? Bill, what about you?
I actually have to go backwards to this morning to talk about this because the highlight of the day for us, I think, on our Good Day program was we got to do an interview with a coach, the first gymnastics coach for Olympian Simone Biles.
Oh, wow.
Who just wrote a book, as you might imagine, about her experience as coach. But, we got to see a lot of pictures of Simone as a 7-year-old gymnast and who didn't even start till she was 7, which was kind of, that was
ancient in gymnastics.
Yeah. So just a remarkable story. And that was just a lot of fun. I mean, sometimes you just get into an interview and you're like, okay, this could go on longer than 5 minutes, but we got to wrap it up.
Right.
So that was great. And, I encourage folks to just check it out on our website and the on-demand section at 9 and 10.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had to ask if that's late because I still can't do a cartwheel. I've never learned.
It starts so young.
I wonder if we'll learn.
Simone Biles got a Presidential Medal of Freedom, if I'm not mistaken. And my comment this morning was, I'm just one Presidential Medal of Freedom behind her, nipping on her heels, I'm telling you. So we're getting close.
I love it. How about you, Beth? Anything big happening this week?
Well, I'm going to Nashville on a girls' trip, which I'm very excited about. It's a really cool city. I'm excited to go back. And on the other front, in Traverse City news, I host a weekly trivia night, a bar trivia night at Rare Bird Brew Pub, which I've done for many years now. And this coming Tuesday at 7:00, it's our season finale. Oh. So we usually take the summer off because they're pretty busy at the brewery in the summer. But I will be hosting with my sister and a friend. So if you want to come have some fun trivia, we give away gift cards. It's our last one. And then we're off until the fall. So
fun.
It's fun.
Will you let me know this fall if you do like a Days of Our Lives theme night?
Yes.
You know what? Maybe just for you. It'll be like 3 people will come, but it'll be like, you'll know it.
My odds of winning just went up though. I'm telling you.
Was there a character named Patch?
Yep.
Okay.
Still on.
He's still there?
He's still on.
Look at that. Patch. I love
Patch trivia night coming up.
Well, I have to say, I'm really excited about the food trucks coming back oh my gosh, now I'm blanking.
Little Fleet.
Little Fleet, thank you. The food trucks are coming back to Little Fleet. And Little Fleet, we actually record this show right on East Front Street in Pancake Boy Studios. And it's just nice to be able to walk down after and hang out and have some food. They're open all year long, but the food trucks are back. And this year's lineup is fire, my friends. Crocodile Palace is back. Cordwood Barbecue, Daily Blend, Dogwood, Traverse City Pizza Company, Tommy the Taco. It's the outdoor feasting, as we all love to do. And that starts today at 3:00. So how about that? And Beth, I know you have a story coming up too, all about food trucks.
I think it should be out today, Friday, when this episode comes out. But we'll have a roundup of lots of restaurant and retail news, which are very popular ticker stories. But we'll have some food truck information in there, and the coin slot too. There's a few new ones coming downtown. So
that's fantastic. Well, thanks again for a wonderful episode, Bill Froehlich and Beth Milligan. We'll be back next week with special guest Jillian Manning from the Northern Express, a brand newbie.
Yeah,
a newbie.
great.
Awesome.
I love it. Be sure to subscribe to the show on all platforms at crystalfrost.com. You can follow us on social media and subscribe to Currently with Christal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. Super easy to do. You can also watch the full show on both YouTube and Facebook. Currently is a Compass Local podcast. It's produced right here at Pancake Boy Productions Studios on East Front Street in Traverse City. I want to say big thanks to our lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to the wonderful West Shore Bank, and of course the coin slot. And speaking of the coin slot, my friends, it is time to get the ball rolling.
I've just
on some
see if
pinball.
Bill retained anything from the last time we did
I was thinking about that this morning. I don't even remember how well I did last time. I forgot to look at the score, so we're gonna.
Not well.
You got to redeem yourself today. Let's do it.
Huh?
What are you looking forward to most as far as summer activities?
I'm going to say Pit Spitters baseball and Interlaken concerts.
Ooh.
2. I took 2.
Baseball and music?
Yeah.
You do it all, girl. Right. How about you, Bill?
So as not to steal those exact same answers, I'm gonna say put something on the grill.
Oh, yeah.
Getting outdoors.
Like anything? Just like a toy car?
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Whatever's close by. Doesn't really matter. I'm not
Bill
picky at this
Froehlich.
point. I'm looking forward to warm weather. So
I don't know
grill
why
something.
you don't do a show called Grillin' with Bill.
Oh.
Man.
Dang it.
Love
Come
that
on.
now.
You should do it. And then you actually grill weird things.
I like where this is going. Do we have time to explore that?
I think we do. All right. I am looking forward to just, outdoor bonfires with friends. One of my favorite things to do. And playing catchphrase with my friends around a bonfire, too. One of my favorites. Women are pretty good.
I've never gotten invited to one of Christal's bonfires.
Oh,
Well,
come.
you got to come. And you also
I'll
have
do
to
the grilling.
Grilling with Bill.
There we go. Perfect.